And now it's our pleasure to welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast, Rusty Mansell, Dogs 247. Rusty, we enjoyed getting a chance to break it down with you. And now, like you mentioned, it was right at the beginning, right? You know, you had Auburn, you had Tennessee, and you had Alabama. And you told us that Stetson Bennett might be able to get the job done. And sure enough, here he is. And so as Georgia's getting ready to go against the Crimson Tide, have that team. You know, I think defensively, it almost feels like we understand exactly what that is. But, you know, has Georgia checked some of the boxes that you wanted to see in terms of being able to pass those tests in Auburn and Tennessee now with that big date in Tuscaloosa coming up this weekend?
I mean, certainly we were learning too with Stetson Bennett. What are we, 10 quarters into him now? He played the second half of the Arkansas game and, you know, played good against Auburn. Tennessee had some spots, had a couple throws I thought he got away with. Darnell Washington made a really good play to basically keep Bryce Thompson from intercepting the ball, you know, in the third quarter. But he just keeps making plays, man. And it's not this. I love kind of watching our board because there's that team that, hey, this kid's a gamer. And then there's that side of, hey, he can't beat Alabama. And that's the main goal. You know, he's getting it done against these teams, and it's, you know, it's a lot, but this is going to be a big test for him to see if he can do enough for Georgia to snap a 5-game losing streak to Nick Saban and an Alabama Crimson Tide.
Are they going to have the option of JT Daniels? Is there what's the depth look like?
You know, I think it's DeJuan Mathis still. You know, I know Kirby Smart technically said he's cleared. Okay, so he is clear, but that doesn't mean he's game ready. And I think that's the difference. So I think JT Daniel, I wouldn't anticipate him playing this weekend. If they can get to this Kentucky game and then you get the bye week, I think you're going to find out what the true plans. If they're going to try to give him a shot, they'll give him in the mix. I think a lot has to do with this Alabama game and how Stetson Bennett plays, because let's be honest, you don't want to waste this defense. The ultimate goal is to win the national championship. You're not going to have a defense like this next year. They've got dudes, but, you know, I said it before, all the right mixers are there right now. So you want to get everything you can out of a unit this special. I think how Stetson Bennett plays Saturday is going to tell the tale on how Georgia is going to attack December if they have another big game with Alabama in the potentially playoffs.
So we were working with the offensive line. We were trying to find the right 5. Do you feel like Matt Luke has settled on a group and feeling a little bit better about the ability to run the ball with some kind of consistency?
Yeah, I think when you look at Warren McClendon going to right tackle over Owen Condon was kind of that deal that he's a little bit more athletic. I think Owen Condon had a really good summer, but for whatever reason hasn't really clicked in games as much. But when they put in Warren McClendon at right tackle, I think things gelled a little more. They got to get Trey Hill those 2 snaps a game. I mean, that's something he's had a problem with going on a year now. I mean, he has won a game. If you go back and look, you cannot do that. The first snap of the game, Stetson Bennett made a hell of a play to actually go get it. The next one was a touchdown for Tennessee. So, and the rest of the game, he was fine. But got to fix those deals. But I think Matt Luke has got his 5 guys dialed in right now, and I think it's the 5 best combination Georgia has on campus right now.
So how would you assess where the offense is at right now for Georgia? Because obviously, as good as Georgia's defense is, Alabama's capable of scoring points. You watched that game last week, just like we did. And the flip side of that is, I don't know how good Ole Miss is. I think they're really good on offense, but Alabama's defense is there's some vulnerability there. And Georgia's probably going to have to get a few points on the board in some form or fashion. So at this point in the season, I feel like we've seen some progression week over week, every week, a little bit. How confident are you in that unit? Do they have another gear in them? Do they have some more that maybe Todd Monken has yet to show us? Give us your State of the Union on the offense.
I think we're going to find out, and that's an easy answer, but let me give you a stat to back that up. We all watch a Georgia-Auburn game, and I think everybody would be in agreement here that went exactly the way Kirby Smart wanted it. He got ahead. He pushed them around, and then the Barton Simmons word, he suffocated them. Boa constrictor, put it to them the second half. Georgia won that game exactly how Kirby Smart wanted it. You know how many plays they ran? 64. Ole Miss played Alabama this weekend. They ran 89 plays. So, Georgia cannot run 64 offensive plays against Alabama and win. They're going to have a better mix. So when I say we're going to find out, do they have another gear? They're going to need another gear. They're not just going to be able to line up and have 3rd and 7 and hit Kyrus Jackson on slot and those types of things. Alabama's going to be ready for that situation, I believe. I think they're going to have to play in front of the chains a lot more, take some shots down the field, because you're starting to see a little tendency. If you want to get picky with Stetson Bennett, it's almost like he is the exact opposite of Jake Fromm. We watched 4 years basically, of samples of Jake Fromm. And Jake Fromm was extremely high rate outside of the hashes. He loved to throw that back shoulder fade. He loved to throw the ball in the flats, those types of things. Stetson Bennett is a lot of throws inside the hatches. He's very comfortable. Tight ends and slot guys. The outside guys aren't getting as much touches. What it looks like to me, they're going to have to throw some 50-50 balls to George Pickens. They're going to have to get the ball in Demetrius Robertson's hands. Guys that can run. Jermaine Burton is another guy. So all this put together, I think after this game, we're going to have a real clear picture of who Georgia is on offense, because they've done enough and they have passed those tests. They're going to have to do more to win this weekend.
Do you think that Alabama is vulnerable? Like, because there is, all right, there's number one, there seems to be some kind of play calling, issues going on with Alabama defensively that they're trying to address. Number two, depending on how much you want to put into Nick Saban's comments, Lane had a pretty good idea of, how to pick apart that Alabama defense. Are there, in your eyes, knowing all these things and taking them all into consideration, are there places in Alabama's defense where there are some weaknesses and some places that you can exploit?
I think Georgia fans looked at that and said, wait a minute, Ole Miss put up X amount of yards and 48 points, whatever they did. We're going to go at them. Georgia is not built that way. Now, what I would be concerned if I'm Alabama was the amount of missed tackles. That is not scheme. That is just personnel. That is practicing. Those types of things really worry you. Was not an Alabama performance from that level last weekend, because they're the team that if you do complete something on, you go to the ground. Very often you don't see the yards after catch. I saw a lot of that this weekend. So I don't think that Alabama is going to face a team offensively that pressures you like Ole Miss. And let's don't discount Matt Corral. He had a hell of a game. 328 yards, 21 completions. I mean, they led time of possession. He had 2 touchdowns, should have had a third. So I think Lane Kiffin called that game, and I think he called that game with the game on the line every single play. His mentality was, we got to win it right here. We cannot take chances because we can't stop Alabama. People complained about the onside kick. I loved it. It doesn't matter.
Hell, he should have onside kicked every time they scored.
Yeah. I mean, it don't matter if you're at the 50 or you have to drive 80. They couldn't stop them. So he was trying to steal a possession, almost did. So I think the way Lane Kiffin attacked Alabama, I think Alabama fans are overreacting a little bit there, because they're not going to face anybody that's going to pressure them like that. They're not. Florida doesn't press you like that. Florida's got a freakazoid out there at wide receiver that's a problem. They got some other guys that go with him, but they're not as fast as what Ole Miss. You look at teams, they come up to the sideline, the quarterback comes up, walks it over, looks at safeties, looks to the sideline, checks it off. They don't do that. They walk up there and they're telling the referee, get the hell out of the way. We're snapping it. And Alabama was exhausted in the fourth quarter.
You've watched Alabama. You know these guys. Alabama's fishing from the same waters Georgia's fishing in. You're familiar with these rosters.
Yep.
I'll go first here. I can't wait for the matchup between Devonta Smith and Tyson Campbell. Yeah. And maybe it's Eric Stokes, or I don't know who, but like for me, I'm very interested to see if Tyson, because I thought Tyson Campbell played great last weekend. And really seems to be sort of kicking into a new gear. Devonta Smith is probably my single favorite wide receiver just to watch. The fluidity and grace of him as a player is awesome. So I think that's going to be an unbelievable matchup. Yep. There's 5 stars all over the field for both teams. Is there a spot, a matchup, a position group that you're maybe most excited to see just from an entertainment standpoint, but feel free to make this a key to the game standpoint too, if that's what you're focused on. But I'm curious where the matchups are that you got your eye on.
You look at Eric Stokes and you look at Tyson Campbell, just as fast and big as anybody Alabama has. where does Georgia have the question? And I stood on the sideline in the 2018 SEC championship game, and they got him twice. Jalen Waddle scored twice because the star position, Tyreke McGee, or Mark Webb, who was a freshman at the time, could not cover him. And he got him once in the back of the end zone. Jalen Hurts scramble, got out, throws in the back of the end zone, touchdown late in the game. Georgia is going to come at him with Tyreke Stevenson. Barton, very familiar with him, 5-star. You're talking about a 205-pound guy. Now, here's the philosophy there. Alabama knows they're going to have him, but Tyreke Stevenson is so physical. I mean, he is dominating people right now. I watched a play earlier today where Tennessee comes off the ball, and he absolutely pile drive the slot wide receiver because he got his hands on him. That is a matchup because you want to use the term jackrabbit. Jalen Waddle is, I mean, he is so fast. I can't wait to watch him in the NFL. He's more of a twitchy guy. We both know Miko Hardman's explosive, but Miko had a touch of stiffness to him. He has a lot of straight line speed. This guy, change of direction, acceleration, it's everything. Not the biggest guy. I'm interested, can Georgia put Tyreke Stevenson on him? And can they make him uncomfortable? And can Tyreke get physical with him? Because he is much bigger than Jalen Waddle. We'll see what happens. That's a big challenge, but I think that's a huge matchup in this game.
I'm going to make a big deal, or we are, like on CBS Sports HQ. It's a killer headline. The 24/7 Sports Total Team Composite was released today, and the Dogs got it. Like, that doesn't get you a win necessarily on Saturdays, but to go beyond, and we're splitting hairs here, but it's ridiculous. Like, about 1 out of every 5 of Georgia scholarship players is a daggum 5-star. But 80% of the roster are 4 stars or 5 stars. To think that Alabama had the number 1 class in 19, 17, 16, and 15, and now Georgia's been able to do that. Like, are those the numbers behind some of your assertions that this is, the most talented defense ever, that like you got to win a national championship with this unit? Is that where the urgency comes from? The idea that this is a unique collection of talent in Athens?
Barton will back me up on this. And we always get this thrown at us when people start talking about rankings and 3 stars, which I think 3 stars are still elite football players in the grand scheme of things. If you are ranked a 3-star, you better be a damn dude in high school. Georgia has all these 5 stars and these high-level kids on defense. Well, they got 3 3-stars, and guess who they are? Eric Stokes, Jordan Davis, and Monty Rice. They hit on all 3 of those guys. So when you mix in all of those guys, and oh, by the way, Jordan Davis is probably their highest-rated defensive player, potentially probably a first-round draft pick, especially off that game and how he played against Trey Smith the other day. So all the combinations are there. They got speed, size, and everything. But when you hit on 3 stars, when they overachieve, everything is there. So all the right mix. But you're right, man. When you really dig into the offensive line of Alabama versus the Georgia defensive line, we'll know it Saturday night, but we really won't know it until about 5 years from now. And we go back and go, oh my God, that guy, both of those were playing for Georgia. All 3 of those guys were playing for Bama. So this matchup here is definitely one the NFL scouts will just absolutely pick the tape apart. I mean, every play will be scrutinized, every angle. This is as good as you can get. This is basically an NFL combine because they get to see dude on dude at every position almost.
2011 LSU Bama kind of stuff where you look and it's like every single starter ends up out there in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, if 2001 Miami would have played 2019 LSU, that would have been the ultimate game. Like, holy crap, dudes everywhere, and quarterbacks alphas minus Ken Dorsey, who, did what he did. But those 2 teams come to mind when I start thinking about, what you look down the road. But Georgia specifically on the defensive side of the ball, man, they're so big in person. It's crazy how big their defensive backs are. I mean, they are massive.
When I was writing that team talent composite story, one of the headlines was, and it was in sort of a lead up to this game in a preview sort of fashion. This is the first time, 2015 is the first team talent composite ranking we released. This will be the first time Alabama has ever played a team that is more talented than they are as defined by the team talent composite.
Yeah.
Do you feel that at all? Like, or is that just sort of just
number two? That's the other thing is I don't know what to make of it. Yeah,
I know. Like to be clear, like I don't. That's it's you're right. Like it's that you need to sort of provide the context there that Alabama's number two and sort of they're much more equivalent than they are. But I mean, just sort of the novelty of that, and the idea that Georgia might be sort of more talented, however incremental that difference might be. And I just wonder if that's because that could all, maybe they're just not more talented. But again, this is just as the team talent composite defines it. But do you at least even sort of feel different this year in terms of the way those rosters are compared?
Yeah, because I've had a chance to watch these two. I think the story behind the story there, Barton, is if it's a 4x100 race, Alabama's number 4 guy has outrun everybody every year. Georgia's got a guy that was able to catch them at least and make it a photo finish. I mean, they have closed the gap on Alabama. That's the best way I know to describe it. Now we're talking, who knows what as far as the points there. They're both very, very talented. But I have made this statement many, many times. And I stood in that room in Phillips Arena in 2017 when Alabama walked in. And I stood there and Georgia walked in. And it did look like two different teams. Now, Georgia had some guys, but they weren't that deep. And when I saw 2018 in warm-ups, I thought, you know what, Georgia's looks like that. When I saw Georgia, I actually went to the game Saturday and was in the field end zone on the field. And when I saw Georgia, I thought, this is what it's supposed to look like. Now, what they do with it, don't know, but this is what they're supposed to look. Every position, and then you got little Stetson here. You can barely see his helmet out there in warm-ups, but the mailman. But you look at that, and Kirby Smart was this year 5. This is his 4th full roster. This guy has he's closed the gap, at least made it very, very close in how we do recruiting ranking.
And listen, don't get it twisted. I'm going to make a big deal about it because I want to send everybody to 247sports.com and send them to the total team talent rankings. I'm going to pump. I was just on CBS Sports HQ earlier today, just throwing the whole game preview out the window just so I could talk about these brand new rankings that were coming out. Don't y'all worry. I'm throwing it out there.
I got a text today from a buddy that's kind of runs in our circle. He said, man, Kirby Smart's going to kill you. What I do today, he goes, y'all got Georgia's the number 1 overall talented team. I said, y'all. I said, oh God, the rankings came out, so I had to go in and click on Barton's deal. So, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and this is what Georgia's done. I mean, Kirby Smart is one guy. Me and Barton understand that they all recruit the same guys: Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama. It doesn't matter if coast to coast. Even though they don't get them all, they offer the same guys, they recruit the same guys. And those kids end up, for the majority, on those rosters.
Go ahead.
Well, just, it's they all recruit the same guys, but it's almost like, Alabama has like traditionally Alabama just has more equity to work with to sort of get those guys. And it feels like, I mean, Georgia's had the number 1 class in the country 2 of the last 3 years. Is that right? And so it's, it is a very unique feeling in that regard that, like, all right, Bama isn't just playing with a stacked deck compared to Georgia anymore. They might still be more talented, but it's a much more sort of comparable spot. And if they are more talented, it's by very minimal difference.
I can tell you, going back to the 2017 game, and listen, I know these kids like them, but I'm just being facts here. You go back and look at the 2017 secondary for Georgia with Malcolm Parrish and those guys playing corner, Dominique Sanders, who made a lot of plays for Georgia. None of those guys are in the league. None of those guys in the NFL. None of them. J.R. Reed, he's not in the league. None of those guys are in the NFL. The 4 guys they got starting right now are all 4 going to the NFL. 2 of them probably, if not first rounders, before the mid-second, Stokes and Campbell will come off the board. They love Lewis Cine. They think he is a freak show. Kid can run. So when we start talking about what you're doing in your story, that is exactly what we're talking about. I mean, they had a really good team in 2017, but it does not stack on paper to what they're trotting up there on Saturdays right now.
I'm trying to think. Either of you guys can help me with this. Is Georgia the best secondary in the SEC? I'm trying to think if there's one better.
Yes,
probably is, right?
Yeah.
Just because, listen, they got DJ Daniel, and I did talk to an NFL scout the other day, and he said, look, we know he's a little banged up, but he has a really, really high grade. So, he's sharing time some with Eric Stokes. And here's a guy that runs a 4.4, 6'1" corner too. So they've got 3 corners now. We can talk about what Georgia's going to face next year in Clemson with all them guys gone, Richard LeCount, Tyson Campbell, Stokes, and all them. That's another story. But for Georgia right now, I'd have a hard time believing somebody's got a better secondary, because you throw in Tyreke Stevenson at that star position, and man, they're big, they're fast, they are really big in person.
And that's a minimum requirement. Like for against Alabama, that's a minimum requirement. You got to be elite with those guys because of the way those receivers can run. So that in and of itself, it could present as big of a challenge as Alabama's going to face.
I think if we're getting to what we're thinking on this game, kind of my thoughts, it comes down to Mac Jones and can they pressure him? Because when I look at him and I go back and watch 2 Alabama games, this dude's shirt is as clean as it is when he walks on the field. And Mac Jones, I don't know that people are understanding how good he is right now, stat-wise, and what he is doing. Now, he's got some guys and he's got a big offensive line, but I want to see him. This is, again, Stetson Bennett has a test. I want to see Mac Jones get hit a couple of times and see what happens. Let's see that side. Let's see, because listen, we start talking about, I don't want to say anything about Cade Mays because I think Cade Mays is a hell of a football player. But I watched Cade Mays get moved to left tackle, and he's trying to block Azeez Ojulari. Then he's trying to block Nolan Smith. And on third down, here comes this freaking 6'4", 235-pound kid that runs a 4.4 and Adam Anderson, and he didn't get a hand on it. He couldn't get a hand on it. So I want to see those guys and see if Alabama can hold up for 3 or 4 quarters, having that speed on the edge and pressure on them and Mac Jones as well.
We made we gave some very good and I believe deservedly good reviews of Tennessee's offensive line going into the Georgia game. Was it combo? They didn't play well, didn't have a great game, or was that really, you think, all just Georgia's playing on a very different level than, without a doubt, a step up from, the way they were able to dominate the trenches against Missouri, but you think that was more Georgia there?
I think it was a lot of Georgia. I really do. I got a chance to watch that real close, and I think they had some bad matchups, especially on the edge. Interior-wise, those guys held their own. But I think this Tennessee team's got at least 3 guys that's going to play NFL, at least 3. I think the guy that kind of disappointed me the most was Wanya Morris, because Barton knows I was really high on him in high school. I think he's a very athletic guy, and he had a very bad day. He gave up the sack to Azeez Ojulari. Monty Rice strip sack come through his gap. He had a couple of things that he just got to get a little bit better at. And those are coaching moves, but I really just think it was kind of one of those deals where they go back and look a couple of years from now and go, like, man, no wonder we couldn't block those dudes. Look what they're doing on Sundays, because they're pretty damn talented up front.
So what's your game pick?
Yeah. You
I know we're catching you early in the week. You've got time to be able to get your official pick out, but
can I do this like a commitment video and pick 2 choices, and y'all just run one on Friday?
Right. That's right.
And I commit to Georgia and then commit to Alabama. Y'all run it on Friday at the press conference. I've looked at this a lot of ways, and it is early in the week, but I really have dug into this game, and I think the last couple of years has been a pretty big trend of the elite offensive teams winning games like this. You go back and look at Alabama last year, 46-41 LSU. You go back and look at LSU versus Georgia last year. Georgia couldn't do anything on offense, but their defense really didn't play that bad until midway through the third, and it just gave out. I just think that Georgia has got to find another gear this week, and I don't know if they're quite there right now. I don't know that they're quite there to win a 38-35 game with Alabama. I just don't. And, when I look at this game, it's gonna, if they do lose again, it's gonna be a rough night on our board. But I think Georgia fans need to understand you probably maybe lean at this point. They'll get another shot at them in December. And it's hard to beat a really good team twice. And I'm a big believer in that. So I heard somebody say yesterday on the radio, it'd be the most Georgia thing ever to beat them on Saturday night and then lose in the Dome and not even make the playoffs, But I think that Georgia, this is a big test for them. And again, I think when this Sunday morning, when I listened to the Cover 3 pod, I was impressed with y'all, man. I get up 7 o'clock Sunday morning, cup of coffee, and I'll turn my phone on. The first thing I get is a Cover 3 update. I'm like, they're working third shift, man. I knew Bart wasn't going to be on there. I'd be damn Bart wasn't on there.
Hey, the body clock. We spend enough time on Broadway on Saturday nights, those late nights. The body clock just knows what's up.
Hey, man, I was proud of y'all. Had a 2-hour ride home. I got an hour and 30 minutes of you guys. So it was good. But I think by the time you guys record that, we're going to know where Georgia is. And if it's going to be, hey, Stetson Bennett is enough, or is this question going to remain of, hey, they're going to have JT Daniel probably if they're going to beat this team in December. So my prediction right now, I would say 30-24. I think it's going to be a hell of a football game. I'll go with Alabama at this point because I know their offense is proven, and I think they're going to fix some things defensively. Again, this Georgia doesn't bring that speed ball that Ole Miss just showed them, but we'll see if Georgia can stop the run and put it into Mac Jones' hands. It might be a different story. So we'll see. But right now, I'll go with 30-24 Alabama.
Not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but hey, I think all Georgia has to do is get one of them. I don't think it matters which one. I think if Alabama and Georgia split, if they win the rest of their games, which is obviously a big if, they got to do that. But if they're as good as we think they are, they both win the rest of their games. They meet again in Atlanta. I think as long as those two games are split, it doesn't matter who won which one. I think they'll both get in along with Ohio State and Clemson.
Let me give you this scenario. Ohio State and Clemson are in. Now they're basically having spring practice until it's time. Ohio State should just have like 6 inter-squad scrimmages for Saturdays and just televise those. Let me ask you this, Barton. Georgia wins Saturday, loses to Florida, does not go to the SEC championship, and then you have an undefeated Oregon. So you got Clemson and Ohio State who are locks. We all agree. I would think they're locks. You get an SEC champion. Does a one-loss SEC team? What if Oregon just runs through the Pac-12?
There's only so much running you can do in 6 games, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, unless look. Yes, if they get just absolutely nasty out there, and they're just it's 30-point wins all over the place. Yep. Then you gotta put them in. But I think if they're slipping by and like they're getting, I can't remember who's on their schedule.
Even one game. If they beat Cal 33-32 and 2 overtimes, it's almost an L in my opinion. So
right.
I'm just going through different scenarios and knowing that right now, and again, we could talk the rest of the day. I mean, Texas A&M schedule. I mean, who knows with those guys? So there's a lot there, but I do think, in my opinion, these teams are going to play twice, and Georgia needs to get one for sure. I mean, they've been close too many times, and I know on the recruiting trail, that's the only thing left. When you get those little negative comments, and everybody does, Georgia does it as well to other teams, I'm sure. The negative comment is, hey, Kirby Smart can't win that big one when it's said and done. So, this will be prime time. The entire country will be watching. This will be a huge monkey off his back to finally beat Alabama.
If Georgia gets the Alabama path into the playoff that you just described right there,
exactly what happened.
Lose the rivalry game, then they're winning the national championship. That's just precedent. The last time that somebody happened.
Alabama fans would be. How pissed Alabama fans would be if Georgia takes the route they took 2 years ago. So I was just thinking about all those settings and all those scenarios today. But the good part about our job, we get to talk about it, and we get to see. It's just fun when you see elite player on player Saturday night.
Before we get you out of here, you mentioned Florida right there. What's your gauge right now on the Gators?
I think they have got one of the most physically gifted players in the game, regardless of position. I watched Texas A&M the first couple of drives, and they tried everything. They tried to jam him. They tried to dub. Next time you get the field level view, watch when he walks by everybody. The DBs are at his shoulder pads. And I'll be honest with you, Georgia tried to put Richard LeCounte on him last year, and he abused Richard LeCounte. They had to come back in with 2 bigger guys. Ultimately, Georgia said, we got to go get Kyle Trask. We got to get him before we can get rid of it. That's what they're going to try to do. So, but on defensive side, man, they've got problems. I mean, they can't get you off the field. 3rd down. I know the old saying with 3rd and Grantham. I saw someone yesterday say he played at Georgia for Todd Grantham. He said, man, if you're confused, you're lost, because he has so much exotic stuff. And maybe Dan Mullen came in, because Dan Mullen made the comment yesterday. I don't know if you heard him make the comment. Let's make sure we're putting our guys to be able to use their abilities. And I bet he went down there and said, no more of this hot zone crap and all that. Let's lock these guys up on the outside and play football, because Grantham does a lot of exotic blitzing and stuff. You know, that's basically where Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp were going out to the Cowboys and spending time with Grantham. That's how Grantham got into that circle, and that's how he got into college football. He was the guy for the Cowboys coming up with all these crazy blitzes that nobody knew. So they go out there and spend time with him, and next thing you know, a couple of years later, this guy's in the SEC.
A lot of SEC coaches talking about trying to simplify it. You know, Ed Odron saying just got to run one play.
That's true. They finally got to defend something other than the power I, and now they got to try to simplify everything.
I'd see that whole deal at LSU. It's shocking. It's shocking, you know. So I don't know if Bo Pelini is going to make it around for Christmas cards this year at his current address. We'll see what happens.
Well, I hope he's renting. That's for damn sure.
I would imagine most of those guys do rent. It's what's crazy. You know, they go in those towns and rent. You know, I know when Will Friend was in Georgia, he rented a house like 3 or 4 years. Like, dude, you going to buy a house? He's like, man, hell no, I'm a college football coach. You know, I'm just renting houses.
Hey, that's the way it goes. He is Rusty Mansell. You can follow him on Twitter at Mansell247. Dogs247, the absolute best in the game. Rusty, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys, for having me.